I had a Girl Scout come to the door yesterday.
Oh, no.
What, don't you like Girl Scouts?
Well, I don't like the cookies because they were filled with all kinds of yucky stuff, but go ahead.
Were you a Girl Scout?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, no, no. Mm-mm.
Well, usually I'm pretty nice to these kids, and I just buy the cookies, but I think I'm done with it. So the little girl
Good.
came up and said, "Hi, I'm a Girl Scout." I'm like, "Yeah, you're a Girl Scout. Congratulations. Is there something you want to tell me?" I didn't say that, but it was like, okay.
In your head, you did. So
You
it's
should you should have a sales pitch ready for this, but she didn't. Eventually, she got around to saying, "Do you want to buy some cookies?" I said, "No, not today.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Good luck. I think I'm over it now." I don't really like Girl Scout cookies. I don't think they're very good. And, if
They're
I'm going to
not.
spend that much on cookies, I'm going to go to Whole Foods and get some Wawa stuff that's made out of, fresh eucalyptus leaves or something. I don't know what. kind of nonsense
Exactly.
they have over
Yeah,
there.
eucalyptus might be a hard sell, in a cookie, but no, I completely agree with you. Years ago when I was working,
Wow, so we're both terrible people.
we're both terrible people, but I'm not as terrible as you because my friend's kid was a Girl Scout and she would always sell the cookies at work. Like she'd bring the whole thing, like the moms do. And they guilt you into buying candles and cookies and cookie
Candles?
dough. Yeah, that was another friend. Her
Oh,
daughter was
jeez.
selling candles, and then they'd sell cookie dough for the choir and all this stuff. And the moms would bring these lists to work and go to lunch, and they'd muscle you into it. But the Girl Scout cookie thing, I was like, oh, for God's sakes. I'm like, what will it take to not have to do this year over year? I worked with this woman for 6 years. I finally just gave her money, and I'm like, just keep the cookies.
Give them to the homeless.
No, keep the cookies. My dad loves those minty ones, and they're just loaded with all kinds of not good stuff.
Well, I don't really care. I mean, yeah,
I do
sure.
care.
They're
Yeah,
not. They're not.
yeah.
There's all kinds of weird. I don't know I honestly don't know what's in them. I'm not. I don't think they're that good, and they're kind
No,
of
they're not that
expensive,
good.
and they getting smaller over the years. Come on.
Yes, what's up with that, right?
I saw a picture from the 1950s of a supermarket, and this woman had her cart full, and one of the things was a cereal box. The cereal box was huge.
Yeah, I know everything's shrinking, and the prices are staying the same or going up.
Yeah, I saw a great article in Axios about that. Oh, no, it wasn't Axios. It's probably TikTok, which makes it
Probably.
not an article.
Yeah, it's
They were
kind of the
talking
same
about-
thing.
They were
Yeah.
showing inflation. Actually, I think it may have been, what's that little guy, the former head of the Fed?
I just keep seeing someone on Family Guy. When
They
you do
pointed
that.
out, don't say Family Guy to me. They pointed out that Pepsi and other companies, big companies like this, are raising prices. They're saying, oh, well, our supply chain prices have gone up and everything's. And he pulled down the data from their last quarter results. And he's like, profits are up 16% from last year. So it's not like there's any additional cost to them.
Mm-hmm.
They're just raising prices because they can. And then Pepsi raises prices, so Coke raises prices. So inflation is generally not caused by rise of prices. It's usually caused by big conglomerates raising their prices
Right.
because they can. And then they make an excuse, well, our prices are going up.
Right.
If your prices are going up, too, then are your profits going up as well? This isn't gross revenue. This is profits. It's another thing that people really don't understand the difference between gross profits and
Right. Well, the prices are really, really just going sky high.
boring. Anyway, so
Anyway, it is boring.
I think
Wait.
I think the Girl Scouts should probably take up piracy because that's the new thing. We're pirates. That was the title of a recent BBC article I read about Crystal Cruises. Apparently, Crystal Cruises has gone bankrupt.
Oh, wow.
And along the way, they stopped paying their fuel costs. So one of this big fuel sellers sued them and put a lien on their ship. So the ship that was coming back to dock in Miami from whence it left and was coming back to Miami a couple weeks ago, it veered off and dropped its passengers off in the Bahamas instead because had they gone to Miami, the ship would have been seized. The cruise ship. We're talking about a full cruise ship.
Right. But
I just think that's amazing. I got a real laugh at it. And Crystal Cruises, I thought Crystal Cruises is one of the nicer cruise lines. Apparently they can't keep their shit together. But, it's been a tough year for everyone. It's just funny that this is basically piracy.
right. So they dropped them off in Bahamas?
Yeah. So instead of getting the Miami, they docked in the Bahamas, and then they got ferried from the Bahamas to Miami, which
Oh,
seems,
gosh.
for the cruise lines, like, well, yeah, that's gonna cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. It's better than losing your hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars worth of ship.
So where's the ship now?
Oh, who knows? Last seen in the Bahamas.
Oh, it's going to be one of those ghost ships.
Well, it might be docking at your island.
Oh, I'm off my island.
What do you mean you're off your island?
They kicked me off the island.
Who kicked you off the island?
The island girl.
The island girl? What are you talking about? How can you get kicked off the island?
It wasn't easy.
We're talking about Tropic Escape, right?
Right.
This is the silly little game you play where you make
Silly
drinks and
little
things.
game.
Oh,
Right.
excuse me.
I know. No, it is a
my games.
No.
I save the universe. I save humanity.
I know.
And you just
Yeah.
serve drinks to people on cargo ships or cruise ships.
Right. It was all over the cruise ship. So the cruise industry has been, sorely abused during the course of this pandemic and the course of the game. It all came to blows over the cruise.
Were you not pulling your
And,
weight or something?
No, I was. But
So why did they kick you off?
Well, there were some issues with quotas and different things, and I just had I felt like it was a lot of pressure to play a game, and I just wanted to have fun. Girls just want to have fun. That's always been my motto, and I voiced my opinion, and it just wasn't taken very well, and next thing I know,
Wow.
I was exited from the game.
You're ostracized from the game. Wow.
So a couple other folks were also, I guess they left. And
Ooh,
I don't
was there
know,
a
some-
purge?
Yeah, I guess a couple of us just jumped overboard.
Wow.
Several, so we're in a new island.
Oh.
It's kind of a happy ending.
I don't know if you, well, I was going to say, if you wanted to, I could drop in with my Spartan and a couple of my Marines and we could take over that goddamn island and
that's
reinsert
okay.
you as the queen of the island.
No, we'll let them make guacamole on their own.
Yeah, what are they going to do if a Spartan shows up? They got nothing. They got no defenses.
It's fine, James.
Right.
But yeah, speaking of cruises, it's been a hard year.
I don't care about the cruises after
It was
that.
a hard year.
Hard year for
I know, I don't care
you've never
about
been on a
anything.
cruise. What do you know about cruises?
I will not go on a cruise. The only way I'll go on a cruise, you want to hear
All
my
right,
way of
fine.
going on a cruise, is if I personally charter like a sailboat, which isn't even a cruise
Oh,
ship.
for crying out loud.
And it's just me and like whoever I know, and then we cruise.
Have you been on a sailboat?
Yes, I loved
okay,
it.
that's surprising. Given your
Oh my God, I loved it.
history with camping, I'm surprised you would tolerate sailing because
No,
it's
I
almost the
absolutely-
same thing.
Yeah, and Dana Point, it was lovely. And I just was like,
Oh, you keep saying that, but I still don't understand how you can do one but not the other.
because camping's gross and cruising was
Camping
cool.
is the same thing without the boat.
No, the cruise was beautiful. It was this vintage cruise boat.
Ooh.
Not cruise boat, like sailboat, and it was just beautiful in all wood, and it was smooth sailing. We were just sailing around Dana Point. It was really fun, and that's the only way I would do it. It was like if I knew the people, had my
I
own
get it.
chef, blah blah blah. So yeah, that's it. No Poconos in the 50s or whatever. What are the Poconos?
I don't know what you're talking about. That's going to get cut. Anyway, so I have a list of news articles that, were interesting this
Okay.
week.
Okay,
Do you want to talk about those? Have you seen Fight Club, the old movie Fight Club?
I have seen Fight Club.
Did we talk about that last week?
No,
Yeah, we did because Meatloaf died.
right? Oh yeah, and you
That's really funny.
and you-
I forgot this was just last week.
right.
So Meatloaf died, and he was credited as being a co-star of Fight Club.
A co-star. He wasn't a co-star though.
No, he was a minor character. So anyway, Fight Club is back
Oh.
in the news because apparently the Chinese authorities have decided to edit the ending. They basically stopped the movie like 5 minutes before the ending, and just on the screen they put up some text that says they failed in their attempt to blow up the buildings, and they go and get admitted to a psychiatric hospital.
Oh.
Here's my question.
Okay, go.
Who really believes that? I mean, do the Chinese people watching this, do they know? I mean, some of them have already seen the movie, the real movie. And obviously China is doing this because they want to maintain their order and they want to make sure that no one has any questions about authority.
Right.
They don't want anyone to undermine authority, even if it's just in a silly movie. Does that really help or hurt them in the long run? How many of the Chinese people know that this nonsense is being done by the country? And if they know the government is doing that, doesn't that undermine the country? If you know your country is lying to you? Those are my two questions.
Okay.
Is that too big of those questions?
No,
too
so
big
let's
for you?
break it down. The first question is,
The first question is, how many of the Chinese people realize that they're being lied to, that this movie has been edited to make the power structures look more stable and reliable?
I would think probably a good majority, if not, I wouldn't say all of them, but probably a lot of them. And I think it's like what you're indoctrinated into and what you'll accept. I mean, our media is slanted, and we accept that.
What do you mean slanted?
I mean, it's like
Who's slanted?
irrespective of which one you watch, you can watch a left-leaning or a right-leaning news if you're so inclined. And so we accept that. So why shouldn't another country's
Those are
power
two
structure.
totally different things, though.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Yes, it
No,
is,
it's not.
because
How
our
is it?
government is not, because our government is not imposing its will on our media.
Oh, yet, but
And not only that, but also you're talking about biases, and I can see media bias.
Mm-hmm.
I understand what's going on there, and I understand when I watch. Well, I don't watch Fox News anymore, but when I
No.
watch it, I understood the bias there. When I used to watch CNN, I used to understand the bias there as well. So these are very different conversations. This is the state coming in and making, ruling over media and how it's presented.
But I was going a little more maybe granular than that. It's just like my point is it's what you're kind of indoctrinated to believe in, and they're used to the state perhaps coming in and doing that. I really can't speak to China.
The state hasn't done a lot of that with foreign films. Hollywood's has been doing it to itself for years now. They've been modifying their films for the Chinese market so as not to offend them, so they can get their films released there. Which, and the big companies have too, like H&M and other companies. Anybody says anything about the Uyghur problem, let's not talk about that, because China responds very forcefully to companies that talk about that stuff by kicking them out of the country. There's the NBA and the tennis league and all that stuff.
Right.
It's been in the news lately.
Yeah, I don't know if it undermines. I mean, I don't know.
My hope, it's probably just me being hopeful, but I think it does more harm than help the Chinese authorities when they do that, because then the people realize what's happening and they know they're being lied to, so they know they shouldn't trust their country. They know they have to parrot the line. This is what seems like the old Soviet Union was the same way to me. Mm-hmm. It came out that you had the Soviet line, everybody had to repeat it, but no one believed it.
That's kind of where I'm going. I mean, that's what I think it is. It's like they just accept it because that's the society they live in. What choice do many of these people have? I mean, there's like...
Well, I'm not sure. It's not a question of what the choice they have. It's a question of, does it help or hurt the Chinese government to do that?
And I think it wouldn't matter if it helped or hurt, because what is going to happen in response to that?
Well, the point is it undermines your authority.
But you still have the authority to do it. I don't know that it undermines anything.
Yeah, but it's an erosion of the faith in the country. And, how far is a Chinese person willing to go to defend China if it knows it can't really rely on China? That's the question. You can get a lot of Americans all wound up and get them to give their lives for their country because of what the country stands for. And generally speaking, it is for justice and the American way and democracy. Those are things worth fighting for. But what in China is there worth fighting for, aside from your homeland and your home? Why would you fight for the Chinese state? You can fight for your home, but why would you fight for the state itself?
Yeah, I don't know. I just think sometimes people are complacent, and maybe it's my simple mind right now. But in China, I can't speak to China. And I don't think it would hurt anything, because I don't think they have many options. And if they were told to go to war, they'd go to war. I mean, I don't, God, I hope not.
But how far do you fight? That's the question. How far are you willing to go before you surrender? And it does. I mean, those are minor points. But anyway, closer to home,
yes,
people doing kind of similar silly stuff is Neil Young pulling out the
I
Spotify.
was going to ask you about that. What do you think of this, the Spotify
I think
thing?
it's silly. I think Neil is being really silly about that.
Well, I think it's,
what do you think?
I like Neil's music. And didn't they used to call him the grandfather of grunge years ago?
I don't know.
Yeah, they did. Someone did. Pearl Jam, really kind of adopted Neil Young and said he was the grandfather of grunge. He's a 60s, 70s, late 60s, probably 70s rocker, right? And back in the day when those folk were rocking it, there was the Vietnam War, there was a lot of activism, and the music of that time reflected the activism of that time.
Well, some of the music, yeah.
Some of it, well, a lot of it. I mean, a lot of the good stuff that has maintained its street cred. I think he's rooted in that time, and there have been zero other artists who joined his protest or his activism toward Spotify. I was reading an article last night. It said, here's a list of everyone who's supported him in this, and it was a blank slate in the article.
Well, I think it's a very shallow, kind of wishy-washy way of defiance. I mean, who's he really defying? Joe Rogan?
No, I think he was defying...
Here's the question. I get how you're trying to compare the COVID deniers and the Vietnam War activists, right? That makes sense.
No, I'm not comparing the COVID deniers. No, that wasn't my comparison at all. The comparison... It was a statement about the time frame that Neil Young was rooted in, was rife with protest, and the protest was reflected in the music.
Well, we have a lot of protests now.
Right, but I don't hear the protest music on the radio. I don't hear the protest music. Maybe there's some of it, and it escapes me, but not to the extent as during that time frame. And I think he's rooted in that time frame. So that level of activism, I think, is just of a bygone era. So when I read that he said Spotify can have Rogan or they can have Young, but they can't have both, I knew right then that Neil Young, who hasn't really, I mean, God love him, and I like his music. I think he's a great musician. I think he's a good lyricist. I like the whole package, but he hasn't released anything since 1989.
I have no idea what his.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. He had 6 million listeners or followers on this platform, but it's clear. I mean, Spotify cut a deal with Rogan for $100 million.
Yeah.
And podcasting is seen as this forefront. It's not like activist 70s music. So who's going to win? I mean, it was a slam friggin' dunk. As soon as I read that article days ago, I knew that Neil Young would be off the platform.
Yeah, I think that the writing was on the wall for that.
Absolutely.
I think it's silly activism, because what is he really being active against? What is he criticizing? He's criticizing about Joe Rogan saying some dumb things about COVID. It's not like Joe Rogan is some big time anti-vaxxer. Most of his podcasts are about he talks to comedians and actors, and he does all of his fighters. He does the extreme fighting thing. I don't even know what they call it anymore. That's 90% of his podcast. And then once in a while, he has interesting guests on who are experts in their field. Mm-hmm. Now, he's gotten into some trouble lately because he's not very good at picking experts in the virology world.
Right.
So he picks people with credentials. These aren't just they are crackpots, but they're at least crackpots who have credentials. So you read their articles and you read their resumes, and they're genuinely people who should seem like they're legitimate people to talk about. They're on the fringe, unfortunately. He
right.
always seems not always, but sometimes he picks people on the fringe and he talks to them, and because he's not smart enough to realize that they don't know what they're really talking about or they're crackpots, he continues some of this. And it's the thing that got him in trouble was talking about myocarditis and how there are some people questioning how dangerous myocarditis is from the vaccine versus COVID.
Right.
And so it's kind of a very fine point, and it's a very narrow thing, and it was a very small part of the conversation. And that's what Neil Young decides to pull his music off of Spotify for? This is Joe Rogan. People take him seriously, but this is...
Well, no one was going to, screw with Joe Rogan.
It's like a very small sliver of a very small sliver of things to get wound up about. So I just thought it was kind of silly. In the end, all you're really doing is promoting Joe Rogan, because everyone's talking about Joe Rogan again.
I think you're right. And I think in this political climate, that's absolutely correct. It's like he gave Joe Rogan a bigger platform because...
More oxygen.
More oxygen. Yeah, I guess the platform remains the same. But I have to say, I understood what he was doing. I think it was not the right avenue to go down. And unfortunately, it hurt his listeners. It hurt his fans. His fandom, it can hurt him. I think he'll be back in the platform at some point.
Yeah, he's charged off the platform in previous years and come back, so he'll probably be back eventually, and that's fine. You can sit out for a while and then go back, or maybe he won't. I don't know. How does it hurt him? I mean, how many millions of dollars has he made, or hundreds of millions of dollars has he made? And it's not like it's going to hurt him or anything.
No, he wanted to make a statement, and I guess in this time.
But the point, my point is the statement. What was he really criticizing? It seems like he was being oversensitive.
He was criticizing the global context of misinformation. He was making it bigger than what Joe Rogan was possibly doing. And I haven't listened to Joe Rogan's podcast on that issue. It's just I try to stay away. I mean, I want to stay in my own bubble, and I don't want to hear some of this stuff. I just don't. I think that's what he was criticizing. And perhaps it was it knee-jerky? Was it well thought out? We don't know. We're not Neil Young. But that was what he had.
Oh, I can tell you, looking at what we're talking about here, it was not very well thought out because it's a very small issue and a very small episode.
But is it...
Right, it's not that Joe Rogan is not this anti-vax crusader. This is not who Joe Rogan is. That's not... So if you want to activize against someone, find someone who's actively spreading the lies. A bigger name, someone who's more responsible for actually spreading disinformation. Joe Rogan is doing accidentally because he's not smart enough to know better.
Accidentally.
Anyway.
Well, I thought it was about the ivermectin and all of that too. It was more than just one or two.
Yeah. Okay, so he's made statements over the course of the past 2 years, some of which are controversial, some of which, are behind getting vaccinated and using as many different kind of tools at your disposal, whether they're ivermectin or actual genuine cures. That's all he's been saying. And he had COVID. Oh, you know who else had COVID lately? Sarah Palin.
She did. She has COVID again. This is the second round.
Again? No, is it the second? Is it? I don't know.
Yeah,
Well,
she was...
over her dead body, she's going to get the vaccine. So, boy, well, let's see how that works out.
Right.
That's the funniest thing. That she's back in the news because she has a defamation trial, which had to be
canceled. Right? Yeah, postponed because she had COVID again.
Because she has COVID. I mean, that's just so
well,
funny.
So, and
in a sad way.
Right. And well, just to wrap on the Neil Young thing, I saw and heard what he was doing. I thought, yes, was it a tad silly? Perhaps. I do still think it was rooted in the activism of the 70s, and it's the platform he's on, and Spotify is kind of the thing, and that's where Rogan is because of the podcast. So that brings it into this century, and that's all you got at that point, and I'm just going to leave it there.
My point is that, to me, it makes Neil Young look silly and petty and not really paying attention. Did he actually listen to the podcast, or is he just responding to the social media snippets?
I don't know that we can make an assumption whether he did. I would hope he listened to it.
It's a question I haven't bothered.
I didn't drill.
I doubt it, though, because I don't think he probably. Well, he wouldn't. He would have made a different point otherwise. He should have said, you shouldn't be talking to crazy people like that,
right?
Even if they are well credentialed, because not all well credentialed people know what they're talking about.
Exactly. But yeah, but getting back to the Sarah Palin thing now. No, I was going to bring that up too. It's funny that we had the same kinds of things on our mind. But when I read that, I think she was positive back in March or May. It was a month that started with M. That's all I recall because I pay so little attention to Sarah Palin's life on the, normal day. But
well, shame on you.
Well, I mean, but the point is she had it before, and now she has it again. And she went to bunch of New York restaurants, I read yesterday, after she had multiple positive tests. And the New Yorkers felt that she was like thumbing their nose at New York. And I think that's a little irresponsible, kind of grossly irresponsible.
Absolutely.
Grossly irresponsible. And my question is more global. So you're going to get the vaccine over your dead body, yet you're willing to get sick every 3 to 6 months with the virus that you're not sure how you're going to react to it, even if you had an okay response the first or second time. I mean, are we just going to become a society whereby we're sick every 3 to 6 months? I'm just questioning.
Well, I don't think we can use Sarah Palin as the foundation for that question because she's not very smart.
Well, right.
She and Joe Rogan should have some kids together.
No, please.
If you want to see a bunch of dumb puppies.
No, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like, how much are you willing to be sick? And to what extent are you willing to push it? And is this, reinfection? I'm not a virologist. I don't profess to even know anything about this stuff. But
you do, since you're a nurse.
Well, somewhat. But, how is it a cumulative effect? I mean, is the virus not clearing? Is there a point whereby you're exposed to different strains of it?
Well, who wants to get sick?
But who wants to get sick? I mean, why?
Right. Why do you want to you get a jab and maybe your arm feels sore for a day? Maybe, or maybe you don't have any reaction to it at all. Just get the vaccine. It's like a flu shot. That's what people do.
That's
you get
my
flu
point,
shots.
James.
It's not a big deal.
It isn't a big deal, and I don't understand.
They want to make it political, and she's irrelevant, and she has nothing smart to say, so she can only parrot the same nonsense that Fox News is peddling out, and it's whipping up their base. It's like, if you're a white person in America, plenty of white people in America have it hard, but most of them don't.
Right.
And so they want to get on the bandwagon of who's hurting me, who is oppressing me. Mm-hmm. And so they have to fabricate nonsense like this to get on that bandwagon. Otherwise, they can't be on that bandwagon. That's what everybody wants now, is to be oppressed.
Oh, gosh. You think everyone wants to be oppressed?
What happened to this podcast?
I don't know. I was just thinking
nowadays?
that. I was just thinking that. I'm like, maybe we need a second podcast.
I don't know. We really need more of this nonsense?
Yes, we need like a current events podcast. So we'll just continue with this. But, I don't understand. To go to restaurants when you've got a problem going on in your body, it's not really...
That's obnoxious.
It's not really at that point. But I also read an article, and I didn't forward it to you, but where this Jack in the Box in California There was a gal. The article starts out with the gal's name. It's like she couldn't read the orders in front of her because her eyes were bleary and her fingers were shaking and she couldn't, because she had COVID. I don't know. She was diagnosed. Just the pharmacist. Maybe she went in and they tested her and the pharmacist said, you probably have COVID. Go home. Well, she called her boss and he's like, nah, put a mask on and don't tell anybody. So she went to work because they work in the fast food industry. And I'm not like crapping on Jack in the Box. I think it's across the board. These people are working in these positions that don't provide benefits and there's no social safety net for them to not lose wages. I mean, there's nothing. They can't stay home. I mean, these people are on the edge, a lot of them, and it is what it is. And she said that she and I guess 3 other employees of this particular Jack in the Box filed a complaint with some state board in California about the conditions and said that, at this particular place that people were knowingly working with COVID, they were encouraged to come in, either deny their COVID status, like hide it from their coworkers and wear masks, and that other employees were allowed to work maskless with a knowing COVID infection.
That's terrible.
But
not all employers are bad. It goes, manager to manager, owner to owner.
Right. But, that extrapolated across this country, the rates are very high. The rates are very high in Arizona. And I was talking to a friend the other day, Misha, as a matter of fact, and she's like, I don't ever eat at Jack in the Box, but I was going from one appointment to the next. And I thought, gosh, I want to grab a taco. And I just kind of drove right by there because I thought, I don't know who's making the taco. And they're probably working infected. And I don't know that. I get it. I would do the same thing.
What, you're not going to Jack in the Box because they have COVID?
No, Taco Bell.
Someone in California has
Taco
COVID?
Bell. Did I say Taco Bell or Jack in the Box?
Confused.
Whatever.
You're talking about Jack in the Box.
Whatever. It's like, no, the point is that I think a lot of people probably are working sick.
Right.
I think there's an exhaustion point, and they don't have a choice. And these companies are sometimes not giving them a choice. And if someone, if you're making whatever they make and you're up against it and you're sick and you don't feel supersonic sick, but you feel sick enough to maybe I'll stay home a day. Like, nah, come on in, just wear a mask and don't tell anyone.
I'm sorry. Are we talking about Taco Bell, Sonic, or McDonald's? Who are we talking about?
We were talking about Jack in the article referenced Jack in the Box.
I know. You just talk about supersonic. Like
supersonic. I know. Where did that come from?
Confused.
Oh, were you getting hungry?
Wacko. No, I don't eat at those places.
Right. I know.
Anyway.
So that was my thing.
The article you did send me was about Michelangelo's Pieta, and
Yeah.
I thought it was the real one.
No, it's not the real one. It's the Florence one.
No, they're both real, but I thought it was the main one because when we talk about Michelangelo's Pieta, there's usually one that everyone remembers, and then the one that no one remembers because he didn't. Well, I don't think he finished either of them. But anyway, you sent me one about one that was unfinished.
Right.
Well,
one of the reasons I sent you that article.
Yeah. What is? I mean, it's interesting, but I didn't know why you wanted to talk about it.
It was
because
it was clickbait in a way, because it's like the Pieta was unfinished, and it's like when I looked at the only reason I read it was because I thought it was the Pieta in the Vatican. So it's kind of a weird, like they're even doing clickbait in like print media these days.
Come on, that's always been a thing.
No, it hasn't. Has it to that extent?
Really? Do you not know the term yellow journalism? Come on.
No, I don't. What is it? You were talking about.
Well, that's from when was that? The 30s or 40s? It was when one guy owned all the newspapers in the U.S. and he was writing terrible stories
Hearst?
And just whipping up Yeah, I think that was Hearst. It was like earlier version of Fox News.
Ah. Anyway, so I thought it was the real Pieta, but Pieta.
They're both real.
No, but the Vatican, the Pieta that comes to
Vatican.
mind. No, this is in Florence. It's in
Well, the other one you were referencing, and I don't know why I don't remember the name of it, but I didn't realize it had different names of the Pieta. No, well, it wasn't when I saw it because I didn't go to the Vatican.
Oh, okay. I thought it was moved to the Vatican. I just read that.
Maybe
last
it
night.
was. Who knows?
Yeah, well, who cares? I mean, I'm not going to see it.
Catholics will steal everything.
Right, but all Pieta means is this just a depiction of the Virgin Mary mourning over the dead body of Christ, and typically in
that case, this is not a Pieta because she wasn't in this piece.
She was in the piece.
She was? I thought it was mainly the guy pulling him down off the cross. It was a guy holding Jesus.
Yes, allegedly Nicodemus, and it's supposed to be the Virgin Mary and Mary Magdalene.
Oh, okay. My bad. I was just looking at the guys. Because he's totally ripped.
He's hooded.
No, Jesus.
Oh, Jesus is ripped, but his arm is ripped off.
He must be a vegan.
Actually, his leg is missing.
I thought they put that back on.
No, did you see the pictures?
I did, but I guess I didn't look that closely.
There's one leg and there's another leg that's missing, because the leg that's missing, and I guess there's a lore about this. First of all, I felt it was clickbaity, and I'm like, oh God, the Pieta, and then it was a different Pieta, and then this Pieta is called the Bandini Pieta or the
Right.
Florence Pieta. I was just interested because it's like, well, he didn't finish the piece. In my mind, I'm like, well, is art ever finished? You kind of go to that point.
Really?
Yeah, don't you?
You really
haven't
want to
you
ask
looked
me
at
that
things?
question?
Hmm?
Do you really want to ask me that question?
In my mind, it can never be finished.
There is a time and a place when things are absolutely, completely finished. Like when you release a film, guess what? It's finished.
Not if you release
Don't
in
mess
China.
with it after it's... Well, that's a good point. But that's not the director's final cut.
Right.
Once it's released, once it's done, it's done. Most of Michelangelo's pieces are completed or destroyed.
Well, they said that he took a hammer to this, allegedly, but when they were restoring it in Florence, that they found that there were no hammer marks. They said, so that was lore.
Yeah, it didn't look... it looked like slightly unfinished. It was mostly finished, but it was slightly unfinished.
Yeah.
Yeah, people make stuff up. You
Yeah.
can't rely on it. Anything that's said in the art world, art-related, you can't rely on it.
Right. So there were just micro cracks.
Microcracks.
Yeah, little cracks in
Yeah.
it. And I don't know.
I
I
feel
just
like
thought it
sometimes
was...
you're a microcrack.
Oh,
Subcrack.
subcrack. Oh, maybe that should be our new podcast name.
We're both cracked.
So anyway, they redid this Pieta, and I thought it was
Well,
a delightful
they didn't redo
article.
it.
No, they didn't redo it. They cleaned it.
They
They
cleaned
basically
it.
said, yeah, that's all they
Redid
did. They cleaned it.
Talk about faulty reporting.
I know, fake news.
They remade it.
Fake news. So anyway, his arm is deformed and one leg is missing. And I guess there was some thought that the leg appeared sexual the way it was draping over one of the other figures.
We're on Spotify too, just so you know.
Yeah.
You can listen to our podcast on Spotify. And I'm worried now that Neil Young is going to come back on Spotify just to protest us by taking his music back off again because you're spreading false news about the Pieta.
No, I think Neil Young understands.
He's kind of old now. You really want to work him up like that? You might have a heart attack.
No, Neil Young's solid. He's solid.
Well, if you say so, but you're killing Neil Young right now.
No, I'm not. Stop it. Stop it. Anyway, the Pieta, have we talked enough about the Pieta? I was trying to infuse some art into this art podcast.
Yeah, I know. We've been terrible lately.
We've been terrible. Is there anything else to talk about?
All that stuff was supposed to be just like idle chit-chat before we got to the art stuff, but it turned out to be the whole podcast. So I think what we're saying is that the Pieta, we didn't really have that much to talk about the Pieta, and we didn't really have much else to talk about, so this episode was, once again, about mostly nothing.
It started with nothing.
And I think we've ended with nothing. Okay. Sorry, guys. We'll try better.
We'll try to
we'll
make
do better next
something
week.
out of nothing.
We'll do better next week.
Okay. All right. We'll try.